Hello, hello everyone. Um, so yeah, this is basically going to be the last week. I might even have to cut Friday off, so it might just be Monday and Wednesday that we have left. I'm not 100% sure. Just work's just getting kind of busy for me. But anyways, um, mm, all right. So anyways, um, does anybody have any questions about anything? Anything that we've been doing? So, 'cause that's kind of like what I need to know. If anybody has any questions about any of the stuff that we've been working on. If you guys been having any problems, all the code is on GitHub, so you should have access to all of it. Um, so does anybody have any questions? I see Mike is in the chat. Hello. Yeah, so nobody has any questions? Nothing? Um, so I made an announcement saying that basically we can either finish what we started or we can use the time that we have left and kind of like move away from this project um, and talk about, something that, a lot of people like to know about, which is how can I create like a video chat application? Um, and, it's not the most straightforward. And so yeah, if you're interested in that, so far only two people have voted, Jim and John, and it's at a tie. Jimbo wants to do the WebRTC, and John wants to just continue going from where we left off. So if you guys want to tell me what you guys want to do, right now it's 50-50 if we continue doing the social media stuff, or we just move away and do the WebRTC. So WebRTC would introduce things like Socket.io to do communication, and then WebRTC technology to actually establish a peer-to-peer connection to send over video and audio. Now the reason why we started late is because I was actually looking for my camera, my LG camera, but I can't freaking find it. So I have the wire, I just can't find the damn camera. So I can't do a demo today. Um, but I leave it up to you guys. If you guys don't decide, then we'll just continue doing what we left off. So just make a choice. We're already over 7 minutes now. Okay. Uh, Nobody's gonna vote. All right. Then we'll just finish up what we've been working on since nobody's voted. Okay. So let's start this. And then let's start up our backend. This one. Oh, no, that's not our backend. Front end. Move this one. Okay, don't want this. Start. All right, this one uses this. Okay. All right, so far we have. Oh, yeah, examp. Gotta start that up. Always forget. Start up MySQL. That's where our data's at. And let's try it again. Okay, so that should be fine. All right, so this is what we have so far. We have this, and then we can sign up a user, so we can sign up, and then we can once we have a user successfully enter all their information, when they go to login, we have the username portion auto populate, so that the next time you come here, all you have to do is type in your password. So we need to have a way to actually log in, which we haven't created an authentication because, well, there's no home page yet, right? We don't have a home page. We have a design here, but we haven't actually built it. So I'm assuming that this is supposed to be the home page. Yeah, once you're logged in. But we have no way to, there's no mobile version. I think Victoria's kind of working on it right now, a mobile version. So yeah, we'll see how this looks. Okay. So I guess now we just have to basically build this. All right, so I'm assuming this is what the home page is gonna look like. The only problem I see is that there's no way to get to, like how do you get to this stuff, this widget over here? This is kind of important. How do we get there? The discussions. So this is not complete enough for me to use yet. Okay, but I guess we can get started on at least trying to build it. So let's try. Okay. So I'm gonna push this to the side and then grab this guy. Okay. All right, so now you click the bidder. Okay, so the bidder is supposed to act as the hamburger button. Gotcha. Okay, well, we can do that. We'll manage. All right. So what I need to do is now, I only want to show the login. Okay, I only want to show the login. Okay, this component here, only, okay, if the user is not logged in. So, if I type in, the password for Spider-Man to log in, I click login. Remember, that doesn't do anything. If they're authenticated, then we want to, we want to be able to show them the main menu instead. So how can we do that? Well, we have to look at how our routes are being generated here. So if you go to the app component, so remember the way React works is you have an entry point, which is index.js, right? This is our entry point. And our entry point to our application, the starting point, is this app component, which is here. Okay, you could do it all inside of index.js. You could do it in here. But, with React, even though index.js is our entry point, we have an entry point for our application as well. Generally, you call it app.js, but you call it whatever you want. And so this is like where, everything's going to be in here usually, inside of app. Once we get into, well, actually, we're not going to be able to get into contexts, but if you had a context, you'd probably put it in index. That way you free up app. All right. But as we can see here, we're manually creating our routes. Okay, so we're saying, okay, if you're going to home, go directly to the login page. But the issue is that we don't actually want to do that. Okay, we only, when they go to the home, what we actually want to do is we want to check to see, okay, is this person authenticated, right? If they are, show them the actual home page. If not, show them the login page. You see? So there is this, there's going to be a condition between showing them the login page and then showing them, the actual home. So what we need to do is actually create a special type of component where it's like, okay, we will allow you to see this only if you're authenticated. So we can put all the logic for authentication in one central location and then just pass in just pass in the component that you want to see if they're authenticated, and then where to go for redirection in the case that, they are not authenticated. So let's create a folder called components, and we'll do it in here. So we're going to create a component called authenticator .jsx. So we'll call it authenticator view. Okay. So what this is going to do is I'm going to feed it a component that I want to be able to be seen only when the user is authenticated, else have a fallback. Okay. So we say import everything as React from React. So as usual, function authentication view. Okay. Then we're going to do export default authentication view. There we go. All right. So what we need to do here in this authentication view is, actually do the authentication. We need to see. Okay. So let's try that. So let's run through the steps. What would need to happen? So let's bring up this awesome thing here, and let's create a sequence of events. Okay, so we're starting here. We start here and we go down. Okay, we're gonna create this flowchart. Okay. So now we're at this little diamond thingy, right? And this is going to be so auth. So this is the auth thing. Okay. So are they authenticated? If yes, we need to do something. If no, we need to do something else. So I think the no would go over here. No. Right? So what do we want to do? So if they are authenticated, okay, then we want to just we go into the show them the component, whatever it is that they want to see. Okay, and then we're done. Okay, then we end here. At least that's the idea. If they aren't, so if they're not authenticated, what do we need to do? If they're not authenticated, we need to send them to somewhere to get authenticated. For example, the login page. Okay, and then once they successfully log in, we need to have a way to then do a redirect, right? To be like, okay, so we are logged in now. So now what? The question is then what do we do? Okay, so does the login now have to have some kind of like feedback? And the answer is yeah. So this login page is going to need to have some kind of hook inside of it where the auth can actually ask the login, hey, let me know when you're done. So here we're going to have another login. Okay. Okay, so then they're going to try and, log in. And if it succeeds, so if this succeeds, if they're able to successfully log in, okay, we're basically going to redirect them back to, where they were trying to go initially, right? Which is this component. We're trying to show them this component. Okay, and then if no, so if they're not able to log in, then, we basically die. We end here. Okay, we're kind of stuck. If you can't log in, well, there's nothing really else where you can do. You're kind of just stuck. I mean, I guess if it's a no, I guess you can make the argument that you just go back to log in, right? It's this whole cycle because you're stuck basically inside of here until you either log in or you sign up. Okay, so we can do that. Okay, so we can do that. So the question is, how do we get this part? How do we get this part to work? Because this part right here, the top part, this part's easy. It's this part that's complicated. So now we're gonna have to think. Okay. So what we need to do is have a way for this login screen, okay, to have a way to be like, hey, if anybody wants to know if I've authenticated, you know, we need to figure out a way to do that. Okay. So what I could do is when they click this this login button, we can actually pass in a variable that's going to be a function that'll get executed by the login. Okay, if everything ends up being successful. So let's update login to actually do that. Okay. So remember in login we can use things called props, right? We have things called props. Okay. So inside of this parameter is going to be our props, so we can put stuff in here. Now one thing we can do is we can automatically do destructuring and put stuff in there. For now I'm just going to do it like this, call this props. Okay, and then just that's about it. Now inside of this props, however, I want to have a function. Okay, I want to have a function. So I'll just pull it out. And I'm going to call this on login success. So I'm going to pull this out. So on login success. So when we click login here, okay, we need to actually do some kind of authentication. Okay. So now we're gonna have to create a function. Authenticate. Okay, and it's gonna have to be asynchronous, so we'll tag it async. And we're gonna need to have access to our bidder API, so we gotta bring that in as well. So import bidder API from, go up to our web APIs, bidder API, and then there's our bidder API. Okay, so in our bidder API, we have the users, and then we can create them, blah, 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 blah. But what we need now is a way to authenticate. So we need to build that in our backend as well. We need a way to actually authenticate a user. So under my users routes, I don't currently have a way to authenticate. So what I can do is I'm going to create a route over here. So I'm going to say route.put, or not .put, you post. Actually, it shouldn't be under the users route. What we're going to create is a whole new route. So we're going to call this auth.js. Okay. And then this is all stuff that we can bring in. Just bring all this in. Okay. And say route.post. Okay. So we're going to create a route. This is going to be auth. Okay. And then in here, this is where you're going to do your authentication. Okay, so we're going to do module.exports is equal to, and then what did I call it? Is a path. I'll just copy this. This is going to be under auth. Okay. So now that we have a path so we can do authentication, all we need to do now is figure out, okay, so how we're going to do authentication. So right now we're going to do it in the most terrible way possible. Just want to say users service is equal to service locator dot get service user service dot name. We're going to type this user service. Okay. Now, currently right now, I guess we could add it to the users, the user service. because we haven't created a proper authentication pipeline. So there's real no way no real way to actually check to see if the username and password is correct. But I guess we can do that. I guess we can do that here. So we can say we can call this under the user service. We'll call this auth, and we'll do it based off their username and then some kind of password. So we're going to manually, or we're going to send these in like that. So the username is just going to be a string. The password is going to be a string. Okay. And then what we're going to return is going to be a promise. Okay. Which is going to be result. And what we'll do is, if everything goes well, we'll just return back a user. So that's going to be ideal. We want to return back a user. Okay. So that's how we'll know. So I'm going to kill the server. Now in my MySQL, under users service here, so I'm just going to copy this over here. I'm going to have to add this in here. I think this is the correct location. Yes. All right, there we go. Cool. Okay, so now from here, I can do what I need to do, which is I need to now go into my backend and do a query with the username and the password. So at some point, so the way we're doing it right now is not a good idea, but at some point you're going to have to authenticate the username and the password directly. The question is, how are you going to do that? So in this instance, because this is just supposed to be for educational purposes, we're just going to have them pass in the username and password in plain text, and then we're just going to do a simple lookup in the database. Is this username and password combination a record inside of our users table? And if it is, then we're good to go. And if not, then that means that either the username doesn't exist or the password is incorrect. All right. So all I need to do now is just, execute a query like we've done, multiple times before. So I'm going to say, we're going to mark this as async because we're going to use the await keyword. Okay. So now we're going to say await. We're going to create a new promise. And then this is going to be the resolve or reject. Okay. All right. And so we have our connection here. So we're going to run a query. So the SQL statement is going to be as follows. So we're going to do a select. Okay. And then, since all we really need is the username and password, we can just say username password from users. Okay. Where username equals question mark, and we're going to inject the username, okay, using the values. We'll just pass in the username. Okay. Now the reason why I'm doing this way, pulling out the username and password, is because, well, I guess you don't really need the password. You could just use the username. Actually, you know what we're going to need is the user ID. So we're going to actually use the user ID to then grab everything. Okay. So that out of the way, we'll then do we'll have here our callback. Again, this is not the proper way you should be doing things, but again, this is what we can do in the allowed time. So if an error happens, we're going to return a reject, and we're just going to pass the error in there. Now, if it doesn't error out, the next thing we need to check is okay. Since results is going to be an array, we do need to check, okay, if the length is 0, what can we say? Well, what we can determine is that the username doesn't exist. So in this instance, the user does not exist what should we do? Okay. Else the user does exist. So at this point, we do exist. So the user exists. Okay, well, that's great. However, now we need to check, okay, did the password that they send us and the password that we have in the database, do they match? So we say if password triple equals, okay, results at 0 dot password. If I remember correctly, how does it look like? So under our users table, it's the field is just called passwords. Okay, so this is perfect. So this is password. Okay, so the user exists. Now we gotta check, does the password exist? So we're gonna do the short circuit route. So at this point, the passwords do not match. So you gotta return something. Else, the username slash password combo is a success. Okay, do you see how we just went through that entire thing? So, something here happens, some kind of error happened, right? Most likely than not, this is our fault. Our SQL statement is incorrect. Our database isn't running. It crashed. Something happened. All right, so if it doesn't error out, okay, then the next thing to check is, okay, since I'm doing the condition based off the username, if I get nothing back, that means the username, the username doesn't exist in our table. So what does that mean? Well, they typed in the incorrect username. So there's that. Okay. So if the result is not 0, then the next thing you need to check is, okay, are the passwords the same? Okay, so if they're not the same, then the passwords do not match. So they know the username, but they don't have the password. So now you're kind of screwed there. So you have to return some kind of error. At this point, though, once we're here, we know what? We know that the username and password that they entered exist in our table. So they're good to go. So now we need to introduce some new error codes that we don't have. So here's our database error codes. So we're going to create some authentication error codes now. So authentication would be like, so the first one, the obvious error is like the password's not correct, but let's start from the top. So they entered a username that doesn't exist. So so authentication username, we'll use the numbers for authentication to start off at 9,000. So say text username. So instead of auth, we'll do unknown username. Okay, so what's what we'll do? Unknown username starting off at 9,000. Okay, what's the other thing they can have? It could be wrong password. So we'll use the number of that would be 9,010. Again, these numbers here, they are, they should be standardized, right? The whole reason why I'm doing something like this is to standardize the error codes, right? So my database error codes need to be standardized. My authentication error codes need to be standardized. That way, no matter what data layers you're using, the error codes are always going to be the same. So when something goes wrong, you'll know kind of like, okay, what the problem probably was. Okay, so knowing that, if we error out here, what can we do? Well, we can return a rejection. However, we have a custom code. We have error codes auth, and then this is unknown username. Let's use the number. Say message. Username, and then we can use some quotes in here and inject it. And we'll say the username does not exist. Okay. That's it. Okay. So if we're at this stage, so the user does exist, but they put in the incorrect password, well, now we can do a rejection. Now we have an error code for that now too. So error codes.auth. wrong password, pull out the number, message, password. Don't send back the password, just say password incorrect. Or you can just say wrong password. Okay. Okay. Now, if it is a success, then we're going to say, okay, we want to resolve. However, we want to send back the user. Now, we don't have to do that ourselves because we already have a way of doing that. So we can say get user. You need to pass in the user ID. Well, I have that. So it's in my results 0 user ID. Now, this might look a little complicated. Like, why are you indexing at 0? Well, remember, when you do a select statement, what is the result? The result is you're going to get a set. It's going to be an array. Okay? So if you get nothing, that means you didn't find anything in your select statement. Your select statement wasn't able to pull anything up. However, since we're doing this condition and the usernames are unique, we should have at most 1. Okay, which is why you can do this. But if it makes it easier, you can say const result is equal to results at 0. Right? This result being coming from here, which is going to be a username, a user ID and password combination. That's what this will have. So you can then remove this if it makes it easier to read or understand. Okay, but just understand that this result has a shape that looks like this. User ID with, you know, some number, and then it's going to have the password, okay, you know, some string. Okay, that's the shape of this. That's the shape. Okay, so we only have these 2 properties to work with on the result, and we know that we can do this safely because, well, we already did the check to see if the length would be 0 or not. Okay, so this should work. This should absolutely work. But again, because we have a promise, it could throw. So we're going to say try. Okay, and we're going to grab up to here. And then we're going to, wrong. There we go. Put that in our tray. I'm going to do a catch. E. And then we're just going to, here we're going to return a new result. Nothing on the payload. We're going to return E. And then here, this promise, we're going to get back our result. Okay, so this promise, when it resolves, it's going to return back the user. So now all we do now is just say, okay, return new result, the result, and then null on the error, since we have no error. Everything succeeded. If there was an error, it would be over here. Okay. And that's it. So that area here is done. We now need to update our route to handle all this. Okay, so we have to do a try. So we're going to do an await. It can throw. So for some reason it throws. We're going to do something over here. Okay, so he goes here. We're going to do a response dot status. Do a 500 dot end. Okay, it shouldn't throw because we're handling the throws internally. Okay, so you should not throw. So what we will have is the payload and the error object that we've been working with. So we're going to say await user service dot authenticate. Now the username and password should be coming from the request dot body. Okay, so what you could do if you wanted to, you could do some destructuring if that helps. So username, password, body like that, and then you can just pass in username and password, since that's what the authentication API here requires. The problem is that if you do this and they try out to authenticate, but they didn't put a username or they didn't put a password, then or if we forget to send it as part of the body, this will throw, because if you try to destructure a property that doesn't exist, that throws an error. So sometimes the safer route for something like this is to actually just do it like this: request body dot username. So actually type it out here. That, you know, is one way to do it. The other way is to do something called validation. I believe we have that here. We do have joy. Do I have enough time for that? No. Maybe we'll do that on Wednesday. We'll update this to do some validation to ensure that username and password are in here. Okay, because those are required fields. Now we can alias our payload to call it user, because that's basically what it is. Our payload will be a user. So now we just have to check. Okay, if there was an error, then we're just going to say response dot status 400 for a bad request. Then we're just going to go ahead and forward over that error. Okay. Else, everything went well. Response status 200 JSON, send back the user. We're good to go. Okay, that's it. And that's it. That's all she wrote. So we need to update over here our routes to include our new route here, which is auth. See how easy that is? I don't have to touch index.js. I just have to update my routes here. Now there's even a way that you could even go full blown like big brain and actually automate this process as well by using the file system at the beginning to actually go through all of these files. You can actually pick up the name of the file, so just remove the .js, and then you could automate this entire process. You could do that as well. That's a big brain move. Not that complicated, but you know, I don't want to go through that right now. So let me run this. Okay, something exploded. Failed to set up database. That's it. Okay. Is my exam still running? Yes, it is. Okay. All right, now I gotta do some debugging. Why did it explode? Okay, I did an await. Is that legal? Await? No, it's not. It's not legal because I have to do this. There we go. Okay, still same problem. Okay. Oh, I know why it's doing that. Okay. So this would need to be async because we're in this function, not the other one. Okay. Now that should be fine. There you go. You gotta be careful with your async so it awaits. Okay, so that's working now. So let's use Postman to then validate to ensure that it is working the way we would expect it to work before we write out our web API. Okay, so here we're in Postman. Okay. So in this bidder API, we're going to right click, add request, add a new one. Here we're going to say this is a post on /auth. So we're going to do a post sending information, HTTP, not S, localhost 5050. This is going to be under auth. The body is raw JSON. Okay, so we have to have a username. I believe one of them is, this is one of the usernames. And then I will send nothing on the password. Let's just see what happens. Hit send. It says wrong password. Great. What is this telling you? That the username does in fact exist, but I do not believe that ASDF is a user. So let's see what happens. Username ASDF does not exist. Amazing. Isn't that crazy? It's amazing. So we have Spider-Man up in here. So I type in Spider-Man. Cool, because I didn't give it a password. Nice. So let me give it a password. And I believe the password was password. Hit send. Wrong password. Maybe it was password 123. Damn, wrong password. Okay. Well, I want to authenticate as Spider-Man, so I'm gonna just do a quick little pro gamer move here and then just go into the database and cheat a little bit. Oops, there we go. Ah, okay. This has to be in backticks. Does the user also have to be in? Alright, whatever. Do a select star from users. There's Spooderman, and his password is, oh, it's pizza time. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Pizza time. Hit send. Beautiful. Okay, so this is definitely wrong because we sent back the payload, which is what we don't want to do. We don't want to send the whole payload. So I made a mistake here. So the mistake was that I sent the whole thing, the result object. So I don't want to do that. So I want to say const user. We'll just structure that. Get user result. Whoops. Dot user ID. Here we go. And then we'll just go ahead and send that over here. Because we don't want we know that they exist, so it's almost impossible that you get an error, though it is possible still. Anything is possible. Alright, so now we do that. So instead of getting this, remember, this is the result object. We don't want the result. We want the payload, which is just this. Okay, now we get nothing back. What's going on? We got nothing back. Okay, so let's see what's result off payload user got nothing back. That's interesting. So how did that happen? Okay, so this user, so let's see, console GeForce. What is this? Console.log user. Let me kill this, run that again, send that over here, and we get undefined. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're destructuring payload, not user. But we can alias this to be user. Okay, that's too many things going on at once in my head. Okay. That should not be empty now. There we go. Pizza time. Cool. All right, so now we can update our front end. So we got to go to our web API. Okay. This is under the users section. So we can create a async. We'll create auth. Type in the username, the password in here. Okay. And we'll type these out. So the username is a string, password is a string. What are we getting back? We'll get back a promise, which is going to return a result, which hopefully inside is a user. Okay. So we're going to use a fetch. Okay. So in here, we're going to say, we're going to inject this dot host, and what's the route we're looking at? Auth. Okay. Now we're going to feed it the fetch some special options, which is method. This is a post. This is a post method. So we're going to use post. The body, JSON.stringify the following: username, password, right? Because we need to send the username and password as a JSON object. So there we go. We're going to stringify it. Okay, then we have the headers. So here we're going to have content type. Let the application know that, hey, we're sending application/JSON. Okay, cool. So if response okay, so before that we'll do await response, get the body as a JSON, so it's going to try and parse it. So if everything went well, then we return a new result object with the JSON and nothing on the error. Else, I guess we don't need an else. Return new result, nothing on the payload, but we return the error, which is itself also the JSON. Because our errors are being managed by us, by the backend. So all you gotta do is forward it. All right. The body will always be what you expect it to be. The difference is knowing, did everything go okay or no? That's the only thing. Okay. Because if everything went okay, then you know the JSON is going to be your payload, the thing that you were expecting, your payload. If it didn't go okay, then the JSON is going to be the error. Okay, beautiful. So in our login, when we do our authentication, now we have a way of doing it. So now we can say, okay, const, we can say result is equal to our bidder API dot users dot auth. We need the username here. So we say username ref dot current dot value, right? And then our password is going to be password ref dot current dot value. Okay. And then here we're just going to say console.log the result object. Okay. Well, actually, what we can do, we have to await this. Excuse me. We have to await it because this is a promise. So we return a promise. We're going to await it. So this should now be our result. And hopefully it's a user. Remember, the result is going to say you might get a user back, but you also might get an error object back. There's no guarantee here. So what we can then do is, instead of doing that, is we can grab the payload and the error objects separately. And what we can do is we can alias this to be the user. So if everything goes well, you should get the user back. Now, ideally, when you authenticate, you're not going to get the user. What you should be getting is something called a token, which has the username and password basically embedded inside. Since we're running out of time, we don't have that kind of time to do JWTs. But ideally here, you would not get the user back. You should be getting a auth token. Okay. So this would not be the user. You should get a token back. But in our instance, we're going to just get the user back because that's just easier to work with. Okay. So now let's maximize this bad boy. Inspect. Let's go to the Le console and then Spider-Man, and then we have pizza time. Hit log in, see what happens. Oh, yeah, okay. The button, I need to actually link it. So I'm going to say on click. What we want to do, we want to authenticate. This function, go in here. And that's it. You're done. Now they're linked. They are linked now. So now, let's try that again. So refresh. Type in here. Pizza time. And watch the right. See what happens. Beautiful. So we have the username. Here it's saying null because I am printing out the username and then the error. So there's no error. So we got the username. Cool. It says right here, Peter Parker. So now imagine that I just do something like this. I just smash my keyboard and I hit login. Now you get a 400. Look, now you get null. Then you get an error code. The error here is 910, which is wrong password. Beautiful. So what if I go over here and I type in something like, you know, green goblin. Okay, obviously he's not a user. I'm gonna hit login. And I get nothing for the user because they don't exist. And I get a username green goblin does not exist. So far so good. Now let's say I send them a username and I give them password, hit login. Same thing. It's going to say username doesn't exist. Beautiful. So we'll switch this back to Spider-Man. Log in. I get a wrong password. Type in the pizza time. You can actually see here it says pizza time. Log in. There we go. So now we have a way to authenticate. Again, I cannot stress this enough. The way I just did it is for demonstration purposes only. Do not deploy a website doing what I just did. This is just for demonstration purposes. The way I went about doing it, that's okay for you to copy. Like setting up the route, setting up the API, stuff like that, that's fine. How you do it though, the implementation is incorrect. Or at least there's a strong safety problem. Okay? So you don't want to be doing it the way I did it. Okay? This is just for educational purposes. Okay, so the next thing to ask is like, okay, we have authenticated, so that's great. But now we have a problem. We need to notify that, hey, we've authenticated correctly. It's like, okay. So how do we do that? Well, that's what this whole part here is. The login will have this this on login success. This is what we call a callback. So we're going to pass a function as a property. And then we can say if the user exists, again, this is not the correct way. Ideally here you would check if you have a token. Okay, here we're just using the user as our token. So if we have this, brilliant. We can say on login success, we just call it. This is a callback. Now, it's possible that login success is null or undefined. For example, right now I haven't updated my code to have that callback. So let me refresh. Let me type in pizza time. So what happens if I try to log in right now? If it succeeds, which I typed in the correct password, we can just check right there. It says pizza time. If I try to hit login, I'm invoking this on login success, but I haven't updated, anywhere that uses login to have that prop be passed. So right now it's guaranteed to be undefined. So let's see what happens when I try and invoke a function that's undefined. It explodes. Because it says right here, on login success is not a function. Exactly, because it's undefined. So how can you avoid having those stupid little errors that pop up just by accident, So one thing you can do is if you're not entirely sure if this thing is null or not, in TypeScript and in languages like C#, really nice languages, you can usually use a question mark and then use a dot operator. This question mark is basically a shorthand to do something like this. If on login user does not equal null or NN on login user does not equal undefined, call it, right? We're basically checking to make sure that it's not undefined or null. Okay, that's cool. However, this is cooler. You can do this, and then you can use an and then just write your code. So if this side is true, then we will invoke this. Okay, so this is the nice shorthand. Instead of doing that whole if this, blah, 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 blah. All right, so now I'm going to type in the pizza time. Again, on login success is undefined. So I hit login, nothing happens. Why? Because it didn't execute this code because this thing wasn't defined. Okay, so now we're just stuck here. Cool. So let's try and fix that. So in our app.js here, we have this thing where it's just like, okay, we have this login. We're passing in the login component. However, we don't want to do that anymore. So what we want to do is you can do something like this. Instead of passing the component, I'm going to build something in here, a little bit more a little bit different. So we have this authentication view we're going to use now. And then what we're going to do is authentication view would have some props. Okay, the props is going to be components. So the first prop is going to be, we'll just call it the view, and then we're going to call it, the other one we'll call it the fallback. We're going to destructure these. Okay. So all we need to do is make sure that the person is authenticated. Okay. So how do we do this? Well, we need to render something. All this stuff always has to render something. So we're going to use a fragment. In here, and we're just going to say, okay, let's do the fallback. So we need to make this uppercase. So we're going to alias it to fallback. We're going to make this one an uppercase view. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, let's try and do the fallback. Now the fallback, I want to have an on login success. So I'm going to feed it a function. Okay. Now this function is going to be stateful because I need it to update an internal state. I'm going to say const here is damn Twitter. I say is so is auth, and we need a set is auth. Okay, you guys remember using your React states. So you're going to say use state, and for now it's going to be false. So we're going to have our fallback here with this on login success. We could probably create something a little bit more generic like is authenticated or authentication success. So on login success, we're going to feed it this function. Now this function, if it's a success, we're going to say set is auth to true. Okay. Now we need a way to get out of this, right? So we need to do this conditionally. So we got to do some conditional rendering. So how do we do that? So what we can do is we can say, okay, if you are authenticated, question mark, right? So I'm going to use something called a it's called a, damn it. Is it a ternary operator? Yeah, ternary operator. So here's a question mark. So if you're authenticated, that's good. We want to show the view. Okay. Else, we want to show this fallback. We want to run this fallback. So basically, we want to inject this over here. But this is hard to read. Okay. So what do? What we can do is we can wrap this in a wrap it like that, and then this becomes a lot easier to read. There we go. So you can actually put this on multiple lines. We have a view here. Else we have this. Beautiful. So now this is stateful. So either you're authenticated or you're not. So the thing is, so let's try that. So now here's the authentication view. So in our authentication view, these props, so the first one is going to be the view. What are we actually going to see? And in this case, we actually don't have anything to render yet. I'm going to pass an undefined. But the fallback we do have, which is login. Okay. So now let's try this. Let's try this section here. So if I refresh this, you'll notice that we're inside of this login. Okay. Nothing, it almost looks like nothing is different, right? Looks like nothing is different. But if I do my pizza time and hit login, okay, this happens, okay? Which is kind of to be expected. Okay. And the reason why we're having this is because I alias this view, and then I'm rendering it as if it did exist, which, we know that this thing right now is undefined. But, I guess just we could do something like, well, let's create a home page real quick. So let's go to the screens over here. We're going to create a home.jsx. And then in here, just do an import everything as React from React function home export default home. And then here we're just going to say return, and then inside of a div we can say home. Okay, so you're only going to be able to see that if you're authenticated. So there's my home. Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, pizza time, hit login, and then bad request. Did I not type in that? Pizza time. Oh, it's all uppercase. Pizza time, hit login. Now I'm home. So I've logged in, I've authenticated, now I am home. But my home is empty. I have nothing because I don't have anything in here yet. This home is going to basically be this. This is our home page. But we needed a way to get in there first. Now we have a way to get in there using authentication. However, if you were to refresh, you're back to the login page. This is where tokens would come in handy, right? So what we could do, which is a terrible idea, is if they have succeeded, we can go into the local storage, we can set the item, and then this key is going to be like, okay, we'll just pass in set item. We're going to call this user, and we're just going to save in the user. So we have to change this into a string, so we're going to pass in just the user like that. Okay. So that's fine. We're going to save the user in there. Okay. Well, that's fine. That's fine. However, we don't want to have to do this every freaking time. So what can we do? Well, what we can do is we can say, okay, well, we're going to create an effector that's only going to run once. Hence, I have the empty dependency list, so it only runs once. What I can do is I can say, okay, let me go to my local storage. Let me get the user. See, here I set it. So let me try and grab it now. This is why I say you should have a token, not a user. Okay. So this item, remember, so that if you look at the get, you're going to get back a string. So I'm going to const, this is be the string. So if I want the actual user now, then you can just, stringify or whatever. However, in our case, we're not really using the user right now, so we don't really give a shit. All we want to know is, okay, does this string actually exist, right? Does this actually exist? If it does, again, this is so terrible. If it does, then we're going to say on login success. We're going to try it. We're going to tell like, yeah, hey, we're authenticated. Cool. And that's it. Now, if we go to the home page and we hit refresh, it goes to home. You saw it says login real quick, but then it goes straight to home. Because when we logged in, if we go over here to application now, if we go to our local storage, click on our user thingy. Oh, right now it says null, so that's not good. So let's fix that. So why does it say null? Okay, so let me fix that. Let me fix that by right-clicking here and just hitting delete. Let's refresh this. Okay, now I go here and say pizza time. Hit login. There it is. There's our user now. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, let me hit refresh. Show the login real quick, but then it went straight to home because we actually have a user based off our logic. Again, what I'm showing you is good. Like, how you would go about doing these things is fine. The implementation though, like doing something like this, putting the actual user in here, is terrible. You would want to replace this with something called a token. Okay? A token. Say it with me. A token. You want a token. You don't want the actual user data. Because it would be very easy to hack this. Right? And you're like, oh, I know the user ID, I know the username, I know their email. And remember, our backend is kind of stupid, and that actually sends us back our password. Remember I told you about that? It's sending back our password. So we need to fix that. Maybe on Wednesday. But now we're at home. Okay, so now that we're at home, now we have a way to actually get to this part, which is our social networking, features. Okay. So now that we're home, now we can build all this stuff. Do you see that? Do you see how this works? So, does anybody have any questions so far? No? All right. Like I said, I'm gonna cut it kind of short today. We will pick up on Wednesday, finishing up some of this stuff, and then hopefully we can get something looking like this, which would be very interesting. And then we'll try and make both of these things happen. This is basically our homepage now, so we're at the homepage level now. So I have to work on finishing the backend to actually create posts. 'Cause I haven't gone over that, but I will do that on my own time. And then we'll have the API to just create posts and stuff, so we can actually get something like this semi-working. Okay, so with that, I will leave you guys, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday. If you guys have any questions, hit up on the Discord, and I'll get back to you. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Peace out.